Some might also argue that steps are being taken. For example, the current trade war between the U.S. and China. But first, let's take a step back. Dr. Atkinson says when it comes to the trade war,
I think a lot of people have made a mistake on is they say, well, the U.S. and particularly President Trump started the trade war. That's not really true at all. It's as if you're in a shooting war and someone has been lobbing bombs at you for 15 years, and then you decide, oh, I better lob a bomb back, and then you get called for starting the war. What Trump did was just simply recognize that China has been playing not by the rules. They've been stealing intellectual property, forced tech transfer, I mean, you name it. Cyber theft. It's not playing by the rules. China has declared war on the U.S. economy for really 20 years.
As the two superpowers continue to compete across key sectors, what would the consequences look like if the U.S. were to lose? According to Dr. Atkinson, that depends on which industry is most at stake.
What I worry about are the more advanced industries where they're very technical, they're very hard to master. Think about building a wide-body jet or a 787 Boeing jet. It's very hard to figure out how to do that. It takes years and years and years of expertise. And the problem is once you lose some of these capabilities, so if our firms get put out of business or shrink because of Chinese competition, it's very, very hard to get those back ever again.
But more than just the economic impact, concerns also come up when looking at how these industries are used.
And the other reason this is so important is these industries are what economists call dual use. So in other words, they have a commercial use, but there's a lot of military or defense spillover. And if we lose a lot of these advanced technology capabilities, it weakens our defense industrial base.
In an effort to combat the Chinese regime's threat, the U.S. National Intelligence and Security Center, or NCSC, has prioritized the following 5 key sectors: AI, quantum computing, biotechnology, semiconductors, and autonomous systems. According to the NCSC report, these 5 sectors produce technologies that may determine whether America remains the world's leading superpower or is eclipsed by strategic competitors in the next few years. Pelson explains why these industries are singled out.
In some cases, they're the building blocks of everything else. So if you can't take over the medical instrument industry and the telecom industry and the avionics industry and the automotive industry, get the chip industry. And now you've got the choke point.
But for some of the other industries, it's not just controlling power in that one sector.
Take quantum computing. This is a scary thought. All security is based on key encryption, which you don't have to understand the technology of it to know that even the NSA cannot crack your WhatsApp. At least they can't do it easily. So a casual encryption is bulletproof to everyone and anyone. And quantum computing opens the possibility that all that goes away. Everything suddenly is exposed. And conversely, everything can be encrypted in a way that no one else could ever crack it under any measures.
And if the Chinese regime does get there first, Eftimiades says,
it also supports a lot, artificial intelligence work, and also supports a lot of their global influence campaigns. So it'll allow China to continue to assert influence over the world. It'll allow China to continue to break down global rule of order, global rule of, rules of order. It'll allow China to become militarily strong enough to compete or to challenge the United States or all global or all powers within its region, the South China Sea in particular.
Given all these risks, how can we intervene? First up is awareness.
I would suggest being very careful using China-based solutions, whether it's a software application. Don't download any app that looks interesting to you and give it all the permissions. Look at who that company is, where they're coming from, and be careful about the permissions you grant.
And if awareness is one part, training is another.
Because training is always your cheapest, most effective means of protecting, the potential victim population. So training and awareness is a key component, but then we do have to have laws. You have to have laws that make it a point that if you're on the U.S. entities list, it's not even a matter of us exporting. means your university can't send students over here. You can't send money over here. You can't have a collaborative relationship over here. And most importantly, and I can't emphasize this enough, the U.S. cannot do this alone. They have to do this with their allies. They have to coordinate this with their allies, whether it be the entire NATO group or our key allies. The U.S. has to do this in concert with the world. It must be the world standing up saying, no more. You need to play by the same rules everybody else is.
After that, Dr. Atkinson lays out 2 more steps.
One is we need to pass this competitiveness legislation now that's in the House and the Senate, ideally the Senate version, because it's much better than the House version. And we can't then go, okay, well, we passed that. Let's move on to other things. We've got to keep at it year after year after year. We can't take our eye off the ball of rebuilding and strengthening U.S. advanced technology competitiveness. It's just, we're going to have to do that for the next 25 years minimum. But we also have to work with our allies to limit the ability of China to gain advantage by unfair means.
Pelson argues for tougher laws.
They have to bring the hammer down on the intellectual property theft. The way it's been done is companies are allowed to kind of step back from China. I saw that with Lucent, where there were 3 spies who stole the software, really the crown jewels for a switch that Lucent was making. And I talk about this in the book. The CEO of Lucent said, we could have pressed for these 3 low-level people to go to jail, but China said to us, if you cooperate in this prosecution, you won't be able to sell to China for a year, which would have been $1 billion loss to a company that was just hanging on. I think what we have to do is have the government step in and say, forget that. You guys were stealing this IP. Your company in China is banned, and all the companies in the free world will not do business with you. It has to be much firmer.
Aftimiadis says beefing up security is another aspect.
The U.S. government needs to change and needs to support industry. And industry has to be a little more savvy than they've been, and understanding that this isn't sort of a nice playing field, that they are very, very much the target of foreign technology collection programs, and they really need to beef up their insider threat programs, their cybersecurity programs, and their standard physical security programs. I know it's an investment on the part of industry, of any industry, to do this, and it's not money that they want to throw at a problem. However, we've seen a number of cases where hundreds of millions in innovation and research were lost due to single employees, and no business can afford that for any great length of time.
Zooming out from the institutional level to the grassroots, what can the average Joe do about all this? Dr. Atkinson adds people should make it an issue to consider at the polls.
It's time to put this as an issue. The elected official for Congress, a senator, House member, president, what are they saying about this issue? Are they saying something that's intelligent and thoughtful and moving the ball forward? Or are they just saying, no, some people on the right, some Republicans say, oh, no, government shouldn't do anything. We should just have a free market. Well, that's not going to get us anywhere. And some Democrats say, oh, the last thing we should do is give any money to business. We can't do that. That's not going to get us anywhere. So they're really good members of Congress on both sides of the aisle that are very thoughtful about this question. And voters need to ask their elected officials, where do you think, where do you stand on these issues? What would you do? And start to pull the electoral voting lever on that. That to me is the best thing voters can do, as well as just paying attention to the issue. What made America the most powerful country in the world, the richest country in the world, was because we were leading in advanced industries. And we're no longer doing that. And if we can't get that back, then I really worry for the country's future. So we just need to buckle up and really put our mind to it and continue to do hopefully what Congress is going to do soon.
It's not just the prospect of a bleak future ahead. It's one that needs a complete overhaul in terms of how we approach the relationship between the world's 2 superpowers.
It's unfortunate to me, but the U.S. policy towards China for 30 plus years, to me, has been characterized by ignorance, arrogance, and greed. You know, the ignorance on not understanding what the CCP was like and what its objectives were, and ascribing to it a different type of behavior than it was actually doing. The arrogance on expecting that, oh, everyone in China just wants to be freedom loving and like in America. Really arrogant on the part of our policy leadership. And the greed, which was our politicians and many of our industries, and just trying to maximize their wealth. It's got us in a very poor position 3 decades later. And if it goes on another decade, it may not be a recoverable position. So it's something that the entire nation has to pull together to address.
Given all these sectors, from power over key industries to a choke point in trade to stealing people's personal data, the Chinese regime isn't a competitor that will help push the United States to the next level. Rather, experts warn if we continue along our current trajectory, the Chinese regime will decimate the U.S. on the global stage. But it's not too late. Those same experts add there are still solutions, and the choice is up to each person to help decide the future. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.